In Minnesota, one of the things that we keep hoping for just about every year is for one of our state officer people who try for national office to actually get a national office. And it's been a long time, but this last fall it happened for Minnesota when Jason Troendl was named National Secretary for our National FFA organization. Jason is here at the State FFA Convention, and we're with him right now. Jason, first of all, welcome to our airwaves, and congratulations on getting the national office as National Secretary.
Thank you. It's definitely been a pleasure and honor to represent Minnesota across the nation. And it's been so wonderful to be able to serve at this capacity. And I mean, I have to say I'm very grateful and very glad to be back in Minnesota. There's no place like home, so it's been a great convention so far.
You probably know better than I do. When was the last time we had a national officer, and how many national officers has Minnesota even had in the last 30 years?
The last national officer was Dean Harding, and that was 27 years ago. And I think in Minnesota's history, if kind of my history is correct, we've had I'm the sixth national officer from the state of Minnesota.
Wow. But a 27-year span. And for those of us here in the state, we know we had people who certainly were qualified for it, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. So what was the final process? I know at national, they have a lot of people try out, and then they kind of do some paring down, and they cut it down to a smaller number and then focus on that. Explain the process a little bit on the national selection.
Yep. Well, it's a fairly intensive process, about a week long. It runs from Sunday through Thursday at National Convention. Actually, Tuesday evening there, they go ahead and they cut the field in half. So this year we had 42 candidates, and we got it down to 21 the second round. And so the first half, we do a couple different writing exercises, a one-on-one interview, stand and deliver. We take a written test. So there's about those 5, and then they go ahead and they limit it, or they cut the field a little bit. And the second half, we do some facilitation. We do some like business and industry type interactions. We have kind of a social event, and then also we have a personal interview with all of the committee. So it's definitely an experience that will not be forgotten, and just a very, very intense week.
How do you actually find out that you become a national officer at one of the last sessions? Are all 21 of you out there, and then someone starts stepping forward as they read in your name?
Yeah, actually, all 42 of us will be present for the most part at that last session, and they go ahead and they play the Chicago Bulls theme song, which still gives me goosebumps today. And then they go ahead and they just announce, your national Central Region Vice President from the state of, Wisconsin, Alicia Hodnick. She's one of my teammates. And then they got to me as a secretary, and I mean, just to be dragged kind of up on stage and be running and just having all those thoughts go through your head, that moment was special.
Jason Troendl is our guest on our broadcast. He is the National FFA Secretary from St. Charles, Minnesota, and our first officer in 27 years. So what is the schedule like as a national officer? Are you in college, able to go to college while you're doing this? What kind of commitment?
We actually are not able to go to college. I will travel for about 300 days out of the year. And so there's no physical or mental capacity that I'd be able to go to school at the same time. So after National Convention in October, we had about a month to finish up school, college, and then for the first about 2 months we went through solid training, and then this whole middle section of the year is really just travel, going to different state conferences, state conventions, business and industry, foundation visits, visiting chapters, schools, different areas of the country, and then about the last month or so is just preparation for convention. But we're busy, go nonstop. The last time I was actually home in my house was February 15th. So it's been quite a while since I've been in Minnesota. So like I said, it's great to be back, but it's a busy schedule, but it's an awesome schedule.
Jason Troendl of St. Charles, Minnesota, the first Minnesota national officer in 27 years, currently the national secretary, is with us on our broadcast. Jason, we were talking about your schedule, how busy it is, but what about when national secretary office is done? What do you get back to doing? What are your hopes for the future?
I think that first and foremost, one of my goals right after convention is I actually want to run a half marathon with my sister. So that's really short term, but I would definitely like to do that. It's just one of those things I have in the back of my mind. But as for kind of more long term, traveling around this year and interacting with young people, I really think that I want to teach. Now that doesn't maybe necessarily mean that I'm going to be like a high school teacher, but I would like to teach. So I've thought about potentially agricultural education. I've also thought about ministry and how that can play in, or also teaching economics. I've loved economics, but I really feel like as young people, we have way more influence and power than most people recognize, and I think that it's helping students and helping young people to recognize that and utilize it to have that positive impact. And so I'm excited in my future to teach. I just am not exactly sure in what capacity that looks like.
You're from St. Charles, a beautiful area down in southeast Minnesota. What do you and your parents do down there?
I grew up just outside of St. Charles in the country. My father is a financial planner, but he was actually an agricultural education teacher for 9 years previous to his current job. So he was the one who looked at me probably in 5th or 6th grade and said, "You're going to take an agriculture class whether you like it or not." And my mom just helps out with that business, but that's how that connection to FFA occurred. But otherwise, just live out in the country. I raised hogs for 9 years for 4-H. And really enjoyed being in that small town and that small community feel.
Last question. As someone now who has gone through the process, applying for, going through the interviews for national officer, and you made it, Minnesota would love to have others make it. You're probably going to become a resource for our Minnesota FFA and saying, Jason, what do you think the special things are that we need to have in a person and things they need to know and be ready for? How do you react to that, and what do you see your role for that in the future?
Well, like I said, it's been a pleasure to serve in this capacity, and I am very, very excited to come back and be that resource. And I would say, as kind of maybe as cliche as it sounds, you have to figure out as an individual, what does it mean to you to be yourself? And also, more importantly, what does it mean to serve? And one of the questions they asked during the national interview process was, Jason, when you see that jacket, what do you see? And I think it applies to way more than just the jacket. When you see, whether you're involved in your church group, whether you're involved with school, what do you see? And I told them, I said, for Jason, I see the ability to build. I fundamentally believe we live in a broken world. We have a broken relationship with ourselves. We have a broken relationship with the people around us. We have a broken relationship with our environment, with the world. And we have a broken relationship with God. And the only, it's my job, the only job I have is to figure out how can we build and how can we rekindle those relationships. And so it's figuring out with people, you as an individual, what is it that you want to do? You serve, but why do you serve? And it's getting down to the root of that. And as soon as you're able to really understand why that is and key in on that, that's when you have people who are so passionate, who are so excited, and are so able to get to the places in life that they want to once they discover what it is inside their own heart that makes them want to serve and that gives them that purpose. And I'm excited to come back and work with people and see how can the FFA and how can we in Minnesota as a whole foster that growth and that energy and that focus for individuals as well as the whole group.
Jason Troendl from St. Charles, thanks for your time here at the State FFA Convention. First time I've got to interview a national officer from Minnesota because I missed doing that 27 years ago. So good to be here and doing it now. Best of luck to you. Good luck in the future.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Jason Troendl from St. Charles, the National FFA Secretary. Jim Bartles reporting for Ingstead Broadcasting.